After selling my first business for $160 million, a bunch of people reached out with questions about how can I start a successful business? What should I be doing at my startup? I've also traveled to a ton of college campuses such as FIU, FAU, University of Miami to talk to students about business and give them feedback on their ideas. Everybody has a different story. I truly believe deep down anyone can create a successful business. So the point of this video is just to go through the most common questions that I get asked on a recurring basis. The next time someone emails me and asks, hey, how did you know when it was time to quit your job? Instead of re-explaining it to them, I can just send them this video. FAQs, there's gonna be a lot of them. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. And if you have any questions, please comment below. I'm of course happy to answer more. So the first question I get asked all the time, especially from students or people who are early in their career, is how do you know when it's time to go all in? When do I know that it's time to drop out of school or quit my job to focus on building my thing? If you want to create an actually successful business and get rich, at some point you're gonna have to go all in. So the question is, when should you go all in? It depends on who you are. If you are 30 years old and have 2 kids, my answer is gonna be different than if you're 20 and you have some savings and you just left college. In my case scenario, the way I made my decision, I was 24. I'm not a super materialistic person, so I saved a ton of money. What I thought was it's kind of an asymmetric bet. The worst case scenario is the startup doesn't work out and I have some money, I can go back to school or I can get a new job ultimately. So my first recommendation is if you want to go all in on a business, try to get some savings. If you quit your job and you have $0 in the bank, sure, you'll probably be more motivated to make your business succeed, but that's also incredibly stressful. The second part of this question is how do you know it's the right idea? It's the right thing to go all in on. I tried a bunch of businesses in college. I worked on healthcare startup, audio companies, media companies. I tried a bunch of different things, but none of them were taking off. I wasn't extremely passionate about any of them. When I took my first job, I was a trader at Susquehanna. I was betting on sports for 2 years before I started my company. I was in every sports betting Discord, every sports betting Telegram, Slack group chat. I was talking to sports bettors all day long, so I felt like I had a very solid understanding of the customer and their pain points. But after talking to hundreds of people who said, I want data-driven betting tools, once sports betting started to legalize, I knew that if I built OddsJam, I would at least make a little bit of money, and that gave me a lot of confidence. The second thing is I had a bunch of passion for the idea. You should not quit your job if you're interested in an idea for 2 days and then you get bored or sick of it or you're not interested in it. Building a great business, a startup, it takes years. So you have to really love something. So for me, even a year after thinking of the idea, every single day, my passion for it and my conviction that it would work grew and grew and grew. The final thing is I thought I had the right team. I spoke with my co-founder who I'd known for years, and he was also really excited about the idea. So not only was I passionate, I loved it, I also was speaking to customers in advance. I was selling before building. I was talking to sports bettors all day long. I did that for a year, and every single day I wanted to quit my job more and more and more. I literally just walked into work one day. I sat down in my chair at work and was like, I can't do this. I need to go. Like, I gotta start this business. And I stood up and I went to my boss and I just quit on the spot, left, never been back to Philadelphia. So I didn't go from 0 to 100 and overnight I just decided. It grew slowly. The second most common question I get is, how do I pick a co-founder? Who do I decide to start my company with? And the average co-founder relationship, it lasts longer than marriages in the US. I'm dead serious about that too. So the person you're getting into business with, you don't just want to kind of know. You should know your co-founder extremely well. Maybe you went to school with them. Maybe you were on the same sports team. Maybe you've been lifelong friends. A lot of people say don't go into business with friends. Well, I started OddsJam with my best friend from high school, and it worked out pretty well for us. Obviously, there's downsides. If the business fails, maybe it impacts your relationship a bit, but the first thing is trust. You have no idea how many people start businesses and end up getting scammed or defrauded, or somebody tries to screw somebody. If every single day I had to log into our bank account because I was worried about money getting stolen out of my pocket, probably I wouldn't have been as effective at my job. The second reason you want to work with a friend or someone you know really well is that you have a high level of knowledge about the person. So for example, Ankit, my co-founder, said, I will go all in on this business with you. I knew that he would hold himself to a high bar. He was my friend. He wanted to do right by me, and I wanted to do right by him. So I promise you, if you are going into business, you really need to make sure you know somebody you meet at a networking event. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you should really spend some time with those people. The founders of Stripe are brothers. So the question you may ask is, what if none of my friends are smart? What if they're all stupid? Well, you should probably start surrounding yourself with ambitious people. If you hang out with a bunch of people who just smoke weed all day, I don't know what you're doing. You should start hanging out with really smart people who actually motivate you and drive you forward. You need to know ambitious people. The third most common question I get is, how do I come up with a startup idea? I need an idea. I want to start a business, but I have zero ideas. And that's okay. And I think my biggest recommendation where to get ideas is you don't want to look too much into the past. So what do I mean by that? Typically what worked in the past, what got people rich, 100 years ago isn't getting people rich today. You need to think into the future. But my recommendation, if you want to start a business, is looking at a few different websites like Trust MRR. Trust MRR shows you different companies and it links with their revenue data. So all the financial metrics are actually verified. So why do companies do this? Wouldn't people want to be secret about it? Most of these guys are trying to sell their businesses or want to see offers. So long story short, what you can do if you have no ideas is you can go on a site like Trust MRR or acquire.com. You can type in what you're interested in and you can see if there's any apps or businesses that are actually making money, and then you can start to research them. I recommend, if you want good startup ideas, look at Trust MRR. I'm not associated at all with them. I'm pretty sure the website's still free, but it is a great place to search for startups. The fourth most common question I get asked is, I have a really good idea, but where do I start? Where do you start once you have a good idea? So the first thing you need to do is you need to verify product market fit, right? Your parents, your friends, everyone, your professors even probably will tell you, yeah, that's a great idea. Go work on it, Susie. The thing is you need to actually prove there's real people out there who will buy your thing. You need to start talking to customers. You don't want to build in isolation. Many first-time founders get this wrong. They rush in to, I need to spend a year building out this complex product. No, you don't. So in the case of OddsJam, I validated that there was product market fit and actual demand for the product that I wanted to build. I have so many friends, first-time founders, who they raise money from their friends, their family, they put their own money in, and they spend years building something that ends up being completely useless. Do not start building a simple email waiting list that says, hey, here's what I'm thinking of building, coming soon, drop in your email if you want to get notified when we're live. That's fine. The second thing you need to do is you need to get uncomfortable. Start posting on social media. Just hit post. 99% of people on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter, they just lurk. Social media is extremely powerful for B2C, B2B. Building is not the hard part. Marketing and distribution are becoming ever more important. So if you want to start a company, the first thing I would do is I would start selling and talking to customers, and I would get uncomfortable. When I started OddsJam, I'd never done a YouTube video. At this point, I've done thousands. At first, I was so nervous. What if people make fun of me? I don't care anymore. If you're not willing to do certain things, there probably is another person who is willing to do those things who is going to absolutely eat your lunch. So the fifth question I get asked very frequently is, can I start a company even if I'm not technical, if I'm not an engineer? And the answer is yes. Building apps and websites is no longer the hard part. The hard part is marketing, sales, distribution, and finding an idea where you actually have PMF, product market fit. So all I recommend is pick an idea that's in your wheelhouse. So when I wanted to start a company, initially when I was in college, I tried to do healthcare. I have no experience in healthcare. I don't have a ton of connections there. I've never been a doctor. I've never sold to a hospital. I'm probably not the right person to start a healthcare company. However, to start a great company, you don't need to be an engineer. You don't even necessarily need to do tech. Don't limit yourself, okay? Don't have limiting beliefs. Even if you're not an engineer, you can absolutely build a business. The sixth question I get is, when should I start hiring people? When should you start paying money to bring in employees? And the truth is you need to do the job first yourself. You're never gonna hire a good sales rep if you've never sold your company's product. You should at least try it out. You should make a few sales, because that's going to help you identify the best salesperson for your business. When I started OddsJam, I was the customer support rep, I was the marketing person, I was the content person, I was the designer, I was negotiating, I was doing sales, I was doing everything. And then ultimately, that made it possible for me to recognize talented people who I could hire, I could train, give them an understanding of how they can do the job and be effective. When we started taking off, I started to break. I was like, wow, I'm spending hours a day on customer support. I don't have the time for this. But I understood the job. I understood the questions we were getting asked. And that made it possible for me to hire a great customer support rep who ended up being our first hire, Randall. Long story short, you don't want to start hiring too early. You want to learn how to do the job yourself, because that makes it possible to actually bring in good talent and the best possible employees for your business. The seventh question I get asked, especially by younger people, is, when I'm starting a company and I'm young, how am I supposed to compete with older people who have more experience? And that's kind of true, but it's also not true. What are the benefits of being young? Number one, you're more likely to take risk because you don't probably have responsibilities. You don't have a mortgage yet. You don't have kids yet. You have more freedom. Also, young people in general are more open to new ideas, right? They're not set in their ways. An investment banker who's worked in investment banking for 30 years, he's probably not going to come up with the next best tech product. I'm just guessing. When you're young, you have freedom. You're also more likely to experiment with new ideas. And also, some industries are just meant for young people. So for example, in the case of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook as a social network for Harvard students. Probably would have been a little weird for a 60-year-old to do that. But you only need to pick one niche. You don't have to do everything. So in the case of OddsJam, most sports bettors are young. So it's actually a benefit to be young. So the eighth most common question I get asked, especially by younger people, is, if you could go back in time, what would I do differently? And there's a lot of things I could talk about here with regards to life and health and things like that. But I'm gonna tell you one piece of advice that I really regret, is I wish I started posting on social media earlier. I understand that there are benefits to being a private person. However, there is a lot of benefit to posting on social media. There are a lot of people who are very young, very rich, have very successful businesses because of social media. It is the best way to market products nowadays. So if you can build up an audience now, post about what you're interested in. That could be health, that could be lifestyle, that could be skincare, that could be makeup. Whatever you're interested in, start making content. You can do YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Ideally, you do them all. And I think it's important to mention that you do not need millions of followers to be successful. In the case of OddsJam, we don't have 1 million subscribers on any platform, and our business was bought for 160 million bucks. All you need to do is just connect with the right people for you, the people who are interested in what you're talking about. The ninth question I get asked a lot is, how do I know if my startup will work? How do I know if this is the right idea? And the truth is, you don't. Ideas are cheap, execution is everything. For example, I literally think there's 1 million people who had the idea of Uber and Airbnb before those companies started. So many people have told me, I had the idea for Uber, I had the idea for Airbnb. This isn't some rocket science ideas, they just executed. So the truth is, you can make almost anything successful, you just need to execute. Ideas are super cheap, which is why you should never ask investors to sign an NDA. Ideas are cheap, execution is everything. So the 10th question I get asked is where do I find my first paying customers? And again, ideally you did something like that in verified demand. So for example, let's say you want to build a crypto trading product. I would talk to hundreds of people on Reddit, message them, be aggressive, get uncomfortable, people on Discord. And once you get 100 people who say, yeah, if you build this product, I'll pay for it, you literally have all of their Reddit usernames and Discord usernames saved, and you can go right back to them, sell them the product once you actually get it built. So how do you get your first paying customers? You should already know who they are. You should already have an email waiting list. The 11th question I get asked is, when should you start charging if you're building a startup? And the truth is, you should start charging on day one. You shouldn't keep your product free. You can price it lower than you ultimately think it will be at, but the truth is you need to verify you can actually get credit cards down. If everyone is just trying free samples, you're not validating that you are going to make money. You need to start charging as early as possible. The second your MVP, your minimum viable product is done, you need to start charging users, even if it's a cheap price, because you just want to prove this is valuable enough that someone's taking the time to whip out their credit card, even if your product's just $2 a month, put it down and pay for it. Another question I get asked is, what is the best business model? Okay, what's the best way for your business to make money? And the simple answer is subscription businesses. But the reason subscription businesses are great is you can project revenue. You know basically your churn rate, how often customers are leaving, and they pay you every single month, so you have more predictable cash flows. It's not like a customer pays you once and then they never come back again in general. So what I think is another thing I want to mention is a business where you plan to sell the data is basically useless. So what I mean by that is a lot of people will say, oh, my business, we're not going to figure out monetization, but ultimately the data we collect is going to be super valuable. There's times that's true, but at the end of the day, most businesses that get bought or IPO, they are making money. Businesses are valued on revenue and EBITDA. EBITDA basically means profit. If you plan to monetize it or sell it based on something that's not revenue or EBITDA, you're probably not thinking about it correctly. You should focus on how much money you're making. So I have 3 more frequently asked questions that I get asked. So I'm just gonna rip through them very briefly. Again, I hope you've enjoyed this video so far. Please like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll include my Instagram, my Twitter, my email, and everything below so you can get in touch with me. So one of the main questions I get asked is, what skills should I learn to start a business? And again, number one, I really do believe building is becoming easier than ever, and distribution marketing is becoming harder than ever. There are millions of Instagram accounts that have over 1 million followers. If you build a great product, people aren't magically going to show up. You need to figure out marketing. So I think focusing on learning marketing and sales is valuable. Similarly, just communication skills in general. When you're hiring employees, you have to be able to communicate why it's a great opportunity to work for your company. So a lot of these soft skills that I honestly overlooked when I was in college. When I was in college, I studied math and computer science. I didn't learn anything about social media. And honestly, I really should have. So I really regret not at least experimenting with it, which I said earlier in the video, but also I wish I learned these soft skills a bit more. I also recommend spending some time learning about AI. You don't need to be an expert, the most technical person, but just getting an understanding of Claude, Gemini, how to improve marketing, how to make yourself more productive. And once you start to see how easy it is to spin up websites and spin up apps with AI, I think that's going to open the world of possibilities to you. But long story short, what skills are valuable when building a company is it's good to have a lot of skills and be a generalist. Again, when I started my company, I had to figure out a lot of things on the fly. I'd never hired somebody, I'd never fired somebody, I'd never managed somebody. You kind of got to learn management. That's not taught in school, at least where I went to school. You have to figure everything out, A/B testing, product optimization. So it's good to be a generalist and be able to pick up skills quickly. But I'd say marketing, sales, the soft skills like communication and learning AI is a good starting point. The second question I get is, if I thought of a business with a friend or in a group, do I need to give them equity? And my honest answer is no. You don't need to give everyone equal equity. Those people don't need to be your co-founders. When I was in college, I took a course. It was a business course, but I got paired with a few women who were building like a women's health business. Ultimately, they didn't want me at the company. I wasn't a good fit. And that's okay. That's just the way it is. There's gonna be people who drive more value. There's gonna be people who actually have skills and are able to execute on ideas. So if you take a class and you talk about some ideas with some friends, that's fine. Again, what matters is execution. The final point is, how do you know if you're focusing on the right things at your business? And honestly, it basically boils down to revenue. A lot of people value how well they're doing based on whether they're getting articles written about them. The only thing you should be focused on is money. And I know that sounds a little greedy, but money isn't everything in life. It's everything in business though. How are you gonna pay employees? Do you think they're gonna work for you if you run out of money? So at the end of the day, money is oxygen for a business. It allows you to hire, to scale, to do new things, to market. In this video, I know I kind of shot from the hip. I went through a bunch of different questions, some more broad, some more focused, but again, I'm on college campuses probably 3 times a week, and I've gotten thousands of DMs from people asking me about my experience starting OddsJam and asking for advice on how they can build their business or make their business bigger. And the point of this video is just to kind of go through and rehash some of the most common questions I get asked so other people can get value.